Hey, Tom.
Hey. I think my takeaway from the conference is just that there is incredible power and incredible leverage in all of us working together and figuring out how to share our solutions, how to adapt ideas from many different people, but into one solution that we as a community agree on. And I think the opposite of building up is building out. And I think a lot of people in the web community just build out. And the thing that I love about Ember is that we all work together and we build up. And so I hope, more than any technical aspect of Ember, I think that ethos of us working together and everyone finding a shared solution is really important. So I hope people take that with them when they're working on their add-ons and their other open source projects.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed in the Ember community that we do well, I think, is build primitives that we can all rely on. And when we build those primitives, what they look like is a very, very simple solution to a problem. So do you have any thoughts about like how that might show itself in the next year or so until next EmberConf?
Yeah, I think primitives or the small building blocks that we can use to build these shared solutions are really key. There's two ways to do any kind of API design. There's top-down design where you design the declarative API, and oftentimes that's not enough, so people need to fall down to a lower level. And if that lower level isn't well thought through, then that's when people say, oh, this thing is magic. It's a black box, I don't understand it. And I think that probably the most exciting building blocks we're adding to Ember this year is obviously Glimmer 2. This is a rendering engine where so many of the parts of Ember have moved out of Ember and into Glimmer, and that means you have this very powerful FRP engine that can reason about in a much larger system. And I think that Glimmer is sufficiently decoupled from Ember. It's very low level. The average Ember developer is not going to go spelunking in the Glimmer 2 source code, hopefully. But I do think what it means is that people can take that engine, really more intermediate and advanced people can take that engine and adapt it to all sorts of different places and use it in ways that I'm sure will be very surprising.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything. So we just saw the keynote. What was the most exciting thing that you've heard today?
It's pretty exciting to see that they're working so hard on the performance stuff, because that's, for us, like a big complaint that I hear is that Ember's not quite ready for use outside of the enterprise space because of performance stuff. So to see this stuff is really cool. It means that it's pretty much ready for, general usage. And that's something I've been looking forward to for a long time.
What have you found most interesting from the keynote that you saw so far?
Glimmer 2,
yeah?
obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
What is your take on what you saw in performance-wise?
Initially blown away. I have to look at the code because there's usually caveats, even though they try and they have good intentions. There's usually some sort of caveat, but I'm very interested. I want to look at the React code.
So. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, man. So,
oh my gosh!
All right, so you were all over on this thing today on the keynote. Yeah. So what have you found interesting at the keynote that you saw today?
Yeah, really just the continued commitment from the core team. Tom and Yehuda make me proud every year. They go up there and show stuff that I certainly couldn't pull off myself. So Fast Boot looks even more amazing this year than last. A lot of the Glimmer stuff means 60 frames plus. That joke about going above 60, hey, let's scale that back. So there's just so many improvements here that even I'm unaware of, being sort of in the Ember community, that make me really excited. There's definitely no stagnation here that I can tell. So really excited, man. This is going to be a good year.
Just that they're going to be bringing all of the things that are moving forward and exciting about the web to Ember first. I think Ember community is going to be the first place that we're going to see a lot of this. We're not going to see it in React the same way, just because the community is so fractured. I think Ember is a really, really strong, unified team together that we can accomplish something awesome.
During the keynote, you were featured in there with your work with the Ember Twiddle. How does it feel to be recognized on the stage?
Awesome! I've been tweeting it and everything.
That's awesome. You deserve it. Thanks so much for all your work.
The focus of the community on getting the offline stuff to really work, I think that's going to be really exciting. And the other thing is really performance improvements in Glimmer 2. I can't wait to get those. Yeah. So yeah, and you can blame Eric Brent for my beard style.
All right, will do. Thank you.
I think the concept of Ember being the SDK for the web, instead people tends to run away from the world framework and consider themselves library, and Ember is doing the exact opposite thing and consider themselves the SDK for the web. So it's like a full-fledged solution to build whatever you need and give you the complete tooling and the complete set of tools for building the entire web experience you want to build.
In particular, I'm really interested in how Yehuda mentioned they're going to look at the object model of Ember and how they can make the object model at the core faster, because like that's something that that I've noticed can be a performance issue if you're creating a lot of Ember objects. It really adds up, especially if you use like ES6 classes. They're so fast compared to object.create. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that.
¿Qué te pareció la keynote?
La parte que más me gustó yo creo que es Ember llamándose a sí mismo un SDK para la web, que es el camino opuesto que toman la mayoría de los frameworks que quieren considerarse librerías y ser todos los lightweight posibles, mientras que Ember se quiere considerar el set de herramientas, el tooling que tú necesitas para construir cualquier experiencia que quieras.
Glimmer 2, for sure.
What is it about Glimmer 2 that...
The rendering speed and also the initial load time, that's going to be huge in our app. We're still on 2.3 and it's terrible. So we're excited. We have like benchmarks where we want to be under 1 second for initial load and file size and all that, and it's like, oh my god, we're like almost right there, but Glimmer 2 will totally like crush those numbers, so that's exciting.
It's awesome.
We have a lot of stateful apps that we need to build, so basically the first initial rendering has to be really, really fast.
Like Ember was a company, it was a stakeholders meeting. And we're talking about how Ember was last year, what's the growth, what's their targets, that's classic stakeholder talk, It's interesting because it makes you feel like you're involved with the project in a way. Y a mí me pareció muy interesante que, voy a decir exactamente lo mismo, de que la charla fue como una reunión de stakeholders, porque hablaron del crecimiento de la empresa, del estado de Ember actualmente, de cómo va a estar Ember en el futuro, y que eso te hace sentir como un stakeholder, una persona que es parte de lo que es Ember.
Gracias.
So I'm John Kleinschmidt, and my talk was using service workers in Ember. Well, I think that service workers are something that we can use today, and really in the future are going to let us do things in our apps that before really you could only do well in native apps, and also just that it's something that we need to be paying attention to. Well, the one thing I heard was people said, hey, I never heard of service worker, and I've been kind of playing around with them for a while, so like it kind of surprised me, but then I realized, okay, it is a new feature, and not everyone knows about it, so that was interesting. And then just people, I think we're excited about it, which was neat to see that other people kind of got the vision of, hey, this is really something useful, this is something we need, and that it could really change things, so yeah. So I think I'd love to see them become more part of Ember Core, to see better browser adaptation of them. The big one is Safari. I'm confident they'll get there, and I hope they get there sooner than later. And I think one of the important things is that if developers really start using service workers, WebKit, Safari, they're going to pay attention and they're going to make it more of a priority. But we need developers. It's kind of the chicken and egg thing. Developers need to start using it, and then it's going to become part of all the browsers, and I think that's where we're headed.
The service workers sound really cool. It's something I've been dying to try out for a long time, but that talk kind of convinced me to give it a go.
Chris Ball, and the name is Cross-Pollinating Communities, We All Win. So really the main thing is just don't be afraid to see what other communities are up to, what other frameworks are doing, even outside of your industry, and just be shameless about stealing ideas from them and kind of make it your own. So everyone says they love hearing about it. They wish other communities would kind of have this kind of thing. I still get people coming up to me and saying that it's a cool project. Like they learn just like one tidbit from it is really what all I want. I mean, not every tip applies to every person, but it's just one of those things of just giving people a way to get their foothold on something that's a little bit of a different kind of way of working with things than what you're used to.
My name is Brenna O'Brien, and my topic was on the select element as a case study for choosing good and modern Ember patterns. I was hoping that people would learn about some of the newer features in current releases of Ember and be able to put these things into practice to solve problems that they might have run into similar to what I did. Someone told me that my explanation of closure actions was really clear because I think that's like a tough one even for me to explain to get my head around. So knowing that I've helped someone understand that is really cool and awesome.
That's great. That's a great actually thing for people to be able to understand.
Yes.
The way Select it's working right now, because I have a lot of problems working with Select in Ember, and also when I work with a different, for example, I use a lot semantic QA, and the way they use selects there, it's kind of hard, but now how she explained that, it was pretty clear and pretty nice.
My name is Bridget Warner, and my talk was an illustrated guide to Ember. People are using it to solve really hard real-world problems that wouldn't have been possible without the way that it was created. I also wanted people to be able to look back and see some of the crazy stuff that was happening in very early Ember and just how far it's come and how much better it's gotten in just a matter of a year and a half, 2 years. A lot of the feedback was an interest in how we did a lot of user testing and sort of discovering how users were actually using Ember and sort of some of the idiosyncrasies of Ember and the bugs that it caused when users do things like use the back button. And so there was a lot of interest around that. Also interest around sort of how additional information and how we've overcome some of the challenges in being able to render a ton of information really quickly. Well, once we release Balance 2.0, which will be in Ember 2.x in April, I guess the continuation would be how the users receive a redesigned UI and just in addition to more advanced technical things that they can do with it, and just the change from going from pagination to scrolling with the table.
My name is Chris Lopresto, and I just spoke on living style guide-driven development. I think this is a great way to shorten the space between a designer working with an engineer. So, above all else, just making that collaborative process simpler and easier and more fun and quicker. I guess the other thing is I hope that people really saw the benefit of presenting the components in that different style guide context, because all of these problems are just on display, or that you may not realize that you have, and then you can fix them and kind of keep them in a working state. So it sort of ends up being this sort of human visual test coverage layer. Well, a lot of people have sort of made a philosophical connection between some of the benefits you get from test-driven development. So, of course, you have test coverage and code coverage metrics and that sort of thing, but there's a whole level of other benefits that start to happen because you end up writing better code because you needed to figure out how to test it. And so almost as a side effect, you end up building something better. So a lot of people have been talking about that sort of notion of by presenting the components in a different spot. It's the same component, but by setting it up in all these different states laid out next to each other, you can sort of get a bunch of wins accumulating together. You end up building better stuff because you had to find a way to present them there in isolation and have them work in your app, so both contexts on display. And then I guess that designer-engineer collaboration, like the ability that if you have set that up, that you can just have two people sit down and work against the thing, as opposed to working in your design software and then handing something off that you've exported and having someone try to build it and then getting feedback if you did the right thing. Like if being able to work together that way, a few people seem to be excited about that idea. I've sort of coalesced all of my effort from the projects that App Labs has done over the past year into that add-on form. So Ember Freestyle kind of represents the spike of as far as we've gotten with an add-on making it easy to get into any Ember app. So what I want to do next is get that add-on into a really good form so that people can just start using it confidently, get documentation in there, but also build out different functionality to really facilitate those workflows. So I would love to see, I've actually talked to some people who are doing similar things in their projects, some beautiful work. And so I'd love to kind of get aligned behind a general approach and, in this case, maybe the Ember Freestyle add-on so that we can combine our efforts. and all be working towards the same goal, but hopefully with the same projects, because it'll be a lot easier if we get some more people involved.
I gave a talk called Ember at Scale. It was basically about LinkedIn's experience picking Ember and some of the infrastructure that we built to use Ember. To scale, Ember is that you really do need shared solutions, and this is definitely the mentality that we have at LinkedIn and how we think about technology. And then I wanted to also get across, there's other ideas that we as a community need to kind of rally around and build, more shared infrastructure in the community. And so I wanted to present some ideas on some of the things that we should be thinking about. I don't remember who exactly I talked to, but they had mentioned they'd seen similar issues and were trying to figure out good ways to solve the problem of having to make extra, AJAX requests when the application boots up and just try to have all the data up front. So I'm really hoping that we can actually get stuff into Fastboot to be able to run Fastboot in multiple different modes. And kind of have maybe Ember CLI deploy has some of takes some of the ideas that I presented and actually streamlines them so that a lot of other people can take advantage of them. Because what I presented was really coupled to LinkedIn infrastructure, but I think it'd be more generic and a shared solution.
Do you know how many people are working with Ember at LinkedIn?
More than 100. So it's quite a few people actually. The team that built the flagship application, the mobile web app, was a team of 50 web devs, but then there's API people and all that type of stuff. And then we have a bunch of internal applications that I have no idea how many there are. There's tens of them.
How do you know how you manage scaling the team in terms of making sure that everybody has the knowledge that's necessary to build the app as the Ember is changing?
So this is something that we're still kind of working on. So Eric Bryn, who's Ember core team member, came into training early last year for I think 200 people. So that was kind of the first round of it. We have a relationship with Tilly, and they have some online training, and that's kind of how a lot of people get ramped up on Ember. But then we're writing internal documentation in terms of best practices for LinkedIn as well.
It's awesome, great. It's really great to see LinkedIn, such a big company, take Ember and run with it. I think it's been really huge for the community, so thank you very much for all the work.
I'm Ray Tiley, and my talk was A Tale of Two Teams. Ember is an opinionated framework, but that doesn't mean that it's not flexible, and it can be used for big bang rewrites, but it can also be used for incremental migrations, which is what my company did. We just kept incrementally adding more and more Ember to our application until we completely rewrote it. That they can fit it into more projects and not just the typical, I'm a startup and I'm going to do a brand new project, or I'm greenfielding an internal tool, that they can actually use Ember on their old code bases and get it to work.
How do you tell one team apart from the other? How do you know which team you are?
So the title of the talk comes because at my company we had two different teams that were migrating two different products, and one chose an incremental rewrite, that was my team, and one was a big bang. So the title of the talk is literal. There were two teams that I talk about during the talk, and how their choices affected their progress. Just giving a talk like mine is 5% content, 95% search in Google.
Oh, I would definitely check out this talk. There's a good blend of sort of larger themes and some, little deeper dives into some of the hacks and things that they've done along the way to kind of move forward a refactor. And so I think it's a really useful talk.
I'd say it's worth it just to hear somebody admit to using CSS for evil.
A little bit of encouragement goes a really, really long way. And I did not do anything to, I'm falling back to the women because I just had this very recent experience. I did not do anything to turn these women into the amazing women that they are. They were already there, and a lot of them I just needed to say a few encouraging words and remind them that they're welcome and ask hey, what can I do to help you? That was actually on the page for our women's program. The top headline was one of the top headlines was, what are we going to do about this problem? How can we help you? How can we make this better? And I think people don't ask a lot. They either assume they know what the right helpful thing to do is, or they assume that even though they're well-intentioned, they don't know how to help. And so they just sit quietly. And maybe it's even a little bit awkward to be like, hey, I don't know what to do, but I want to tackle this problem. But try, be earnest, be sincere, be encouraging. If you know someone who isn't represented very well but is really smart, and you probably do, and has things to say, you for sure do, encourage them to stand up and take a leadership role and help other people just like them realize that they're welcome and that they should be the important people that they are in our community.
Here, the famous Stefan Penner. Stefan Penner makes a lot of awesome things for us and makes a lot of things that we sometimes don't see but make a huge difference. So can you, Steph, tell us about the talk you just gave?
Yeah, so I spoke about Ember CLI. I spoke about where it came from, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how we're going to fix the things that haven't worked. One of the things is we've instituted an Ember CLI core team. We have an open RFC process now. We have a very active channel in Slack, and we're hoping to work more with the community to engage them on contributions, make them aware of stuff. In addition to that, we demonstrated that our previous almost pedantic level of care and detail for specific developer experience details has paid off, and we're hoping that this will make other people also feel that investing in this tech will be worth their time. Feedback's been pretty good. Biggest pain points are dependencies and bundling. People have big apps now. They want to have smaller chunks of their app. And another one is better Windows support. And I think all these three things were teed up really well to nail this year. So I need to stop giving the same talk. Second of all, almost most of the things that we set out to do 2 years ago have been accomplished. And a few haven't, but most of them have. So I hope that in 2 years we're going to have a whole bunch of really hard problems, but it'll be none of the problems that we have today. It'll be because we are building even bigger, more ambitious, more advanced applications. So we'll be in a whole fun, different set of problems to deal with. But hopefully everything today will be sorted out by then.
Great, thanks, Steph. Thanks so much for everything you do. It's really valuable to us, to the community, to everyone.
Thank you guys for all your community support as well. This is invaluable.
There's a lot of boring parts, staff development that nobody wants to do. These are the things that are the same across all JavaScript apps you want to do, even weird ones like a game about your cat. So yeah, that's what the talk was about. Well, nobody told me they hated it, but I'm not sure they would. So I felt pretty good. I felt like it was nice. It was a fun crowd.
What about all the people in the audience that were allergic to cats?
Oh man, apologies to them. Hopefully they weren't allergic to, I'm covered in cat fur 24 hours a day, so I apologize if you were sneezing because of me. I think just a coalescing on design pattern, or just programming patterns, testing patterns, and so we have really strong conventions for the most common things we want to do, so we can just focus on our business logic and less on the details of implementation. If you want to check out the code for the Croissant the Pizza Cat game, check that out. GitHub handle is MT McKenna. The repo is croissant-runner-ember.
My name is Ivan, and my talk was Building Ambitious Data Visualizations in Ember. The speaker dinner, when Yehuda pointed out that last year, Luke Millier really did an amazing job pulling the community together to build a deploy add-on, and I kind of want to do that the same with visualizations in Ember and make it a first-class citizen, I'm actually blown away by how many people are actually doing data viz in Ember. That's really cool. There's a lot of people who have also come across the same problems, which means that I'm not going down the wrong path with this, and I definitely want to get everyone else together to produce something awesome so we can start building amazing data visualizations without throwing other crazy JavaScript in there and being able to keep them maintainable and testable and easily reproducible.
Head of my talk was the Ember add-on community, and I covered the community from users of add-ons to maintainers of add-ons to kind of an overall view of the state of add-ons. Great, I heard from somebody who told me that they wanted to open their laptop and start contributing right away to the add-ons. To see more add-ons combine. There are a lot of similar ones in certain areas, especially around material design. I'd like to see more combine into community solutions instead of a lot of different options.
Interoperable web components. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways that come about it, because it's also talking about patterns. So the word idiomatic always comes into my head. But the general idea is that we want to demonstrate a series of patterns that you could use if you want to create a component that's going to be used in a variety of different calling contexts. Most importantly, they're all in the browser. So we're talking about invoking a custom element kind of component from React, from Angular 2, from Ember, from raw HTML that's being booted up by the browser. There are a lot of different constraints in all those calling contexts, and there's really kind of like 3 patterns that I identified from looking at different libraries that support this and the different limitations of the templating engines. And yeah, we went through those patterns and told people how they could use both call those components from Ember, and then also we have a prototype of an add-on that's on the 201 created repo that you can use to publish an Ember component as a custom element and then use it from inside of any page, which is pretty magical. So the land of custom elements and all this web component stuff is very intimidating, I think. When I started looking into it, it's very overwhelming. There's 4 specs. One of them is a real recommendation. The other 3 are changing very rapidly. I was doing research for the talk 2.5 weeks ago, and the most base API, document.register element, which registers a custom element, was thrown away in favor of window.customelements.define. So this stuff is, all of it, even the most basic stuff, is churning very rapidly, and I think there is a subset of the functionality that is stable and that actually works very well back to IE9. And so I encourage people to take a second look at that, and kind of in the same vein as the keynote that we had this morning, try and use these APIs that are still a little bit experimental and push them forward and see if we can't burst through to some like new interesting ways of using Ember on the web. One side is Ember consuming a custom element component, and in that vein, Ember has a small failing in that it has a very good default presumed way in which it can invoke custom elements, and it passes attributes and it does kind of the right thing. Kind of does it by accident though, and it's fairly easy to trip yourself up in some edge cases. I think we can make more like declarative clear APIs that let people know I'm passing an attribute, I'm attaching an event listener and things like that. That's probably going to come out of an RFC called event modifiers, which will allow us to make generic helpers like style or anything else that we want to attach to an element, and kind of like push that problem out into user space, which I'm really excited because the solutions that we get from user space in Ember right now are really good because we have so many people doing real world stuff and experimenting with these things. The other side is from the producer standpoint, where you want to use an Ember component as one of these custom element things. I think we have solutions right now like Ember Islands, and well, you can use Wormhole for a similar effect. I think those projects can be morphed into something with custom elements that allows you to invoke Ember components without needing to install a Ruby package or do anything with JSON or think about things at that level. You should just be able to call it as an HTML element, and all the work happens on the client side. And I think that could, raise adoption and make Ember much more attractive as a migration strategy away from more traditional web apps.
And lastly, what does SDK for the web mean to you?
SDK, so the web is a very quickly changing platform, and at least the thing that's most in my mind with web components is that as we build things on top of specs that are still morphing, it's nice to have a layer of isolation. So custom elements is a spec which is fairly stable. Well, it was fairly stable until a few weeks ago. By using a polyfill that goes fulfills that spec, the polyfill itself becomes an island of stability for you, and I think that's kind of what I'd like to see Ember and the add-ons that we make do, is they provide this layer of isolation where if things are churning underneath, we have new rendering engines that are coming out. If we have better ways of dealing with APIs with GraphQL query building or JSON API query building or something like that, all of those, you're kind of isolated from that churn in your application code. You don't need to constantly be chasing all that stuff. You have a nice migration path forward.
Great. Thank you for all your work.
Cool. Yeah, cheers, man.
All right,
nice to chat with you.
Yeah. Can you tell me the last talk that you saw and what you found most interesting about it?
It was the Living Style Guide talk, and The whole concept of it and the whole add-on seems awesome.
Obviously, I'm a big fan of Glimmer 2. If you know most of my work on Ember has probably been around performance stuff, and so I'm really happy to see our progress in that regard. I think, what else? I mean, there's a lot of great talks on like modern best practices, doing things like using contextual components. So we saw some great talks from Ivan, and I think Lauren might have mentioned them as well. And kind of moving best practices forward and kind of sharing information. That's really what the Ember community is all about. So
I was at the Ember Electron talk, and so what I took away with that is some really cool possibilities for our own app and getting onto the Electron platform.
I think the thing I'm most excited about is really just seeing how the community is evolving. I really liked Steph's talk on Ember CLI today. I think, it's really important to keep in mind that as we improve the Ember ecosystem, we're improving the JavaScript ecosystem. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to make tools like Ember CLI better, and that involves making the tools that Ember CLI depends on better, which benefits the entire, the Node community, the NPM community, the JavaScript community as a whole. And, that's an upstream and downstream thing. I mean, you have Angular and React and other communities that are starting to look into building on top of Ember CLI. So, we can benefit them by making our tools better, and we can benefit everyone else by making the tools that we depend on better.
I saw the memory management and the overview of the run loops was the most interesting thing.
Ember scaling topic. The LinkedIn guy was giving a talk about it. This was really interesting to see how big companies are using Ember and helping to develop it further. And so yeah, I liked it.
The way he presented some challenges and some non-traditional ways to solve problems with Ember.
I like the fact you get a stability without stagnation. Basically, I forget the name of the person who gave the talk, but they were able to upgrade their app and get performance gains without having to change anything in their app. So that's one of the things you get for Ember, and it was cool to see it in action.
It was how I learned to love Ember. And I thought it was really interesting because I've been struggling with how to love Ember. I had a similar background to that speaker, starting with Rails and being frustrated with JavaScript. So it was some good advice on how to really enjoy working with Ember.
Saying that now that you have the ability to have a desktop application, you have so much more power, and you have to really start thinking about security a lot more.
Because on the web, it's a little more sandbox. It's just not something I'd considered, and it was pretty interesting to hear about.
Interesting how history repeats itself in different forms of web development going to the desktop, but this one looks cool.
Some kind of good narrative, like what Estelle, how it works. And it just makes more sense, and then your day-to-day becomes more obvious. So I think that type of deeper dive kind of tour onto the guts of the system is extremely helpful.
I know you're using service workers for a really kind of important project. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're using it, what the project is and how you're using service workers there?
Yeah. Okay. So we're using them for Hospital Run, it's a open source hospital information system for hospitals in the developing world. There's over 14,000 facilities in the developing world that need a simple solution to doing the things that a hospital needs to keep track of their patients and to run a hospital. And so we've developed a solution, and in a lot of locations, the internet's not great, so service workers really help us to overcome that hurdle, to be able to work offline or online, and to handle bad connectivity where 1 minute you have connectivity, the next minute you don't. So we're really excited that we have this browser technology at our hands to use in this project.
I'm pretty excited about FastBoot. Yeah. We're actually in the process right now of taking a really giant application and making it mobile friendly. I'm building an internal app, but it's actually used by a lot of famous people. I work at Netflix. So, Kevin Spacey wants to check in on our app on his phone, and it's impossible to do that right now. So we're actually in the process of doing exactly what they were talking about, which is pretty exciting. So.
Wow, that's really exciting. All right, thank you.
Very cool. This is the coolest Tomster. He has. Yeah.
We're getting set up, and we're beginning to do an online education initiative where we help people learn to play guitar. And So we're starting right now to be getting a lot of infrastructure in place, but we have like a long-term plan to use Ember and to build out and like have multiple Ember apps, like so an ecosystem. So we're really looking forward to engines, and like we're really looking forward to be able to reuse like multiple, like not just components, but whole functionality suites across the applications.
So, how did your workshop go yesterday?
It went great.
Yeah.
It was a challenging topic to go over, which is like how to handle state in a single page app. So we dealt with like persistent state and draft comments. So how do you save the user from hosing themselves for something they have to type for a long time? We went deep into the router so people understand query params and star segments and dynamic segments. I think now we've equipped people so that they're not getting those like set on destroyed object errors. They understand the life cycles and how they line up. So I hope we're going to be able to do it again a couple times in various different places. But it's I think it was a winner for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks, Taras.
We were made maintainers of CLI Cordova, and then even more pleased a couple of weeks ago when we were given the blessing to go and init our hard fork of Ember Cordova.
I'm Balin Terdi. I wrote a book called Rock and Roll with Ember.js, which teaches like newcomers to Ember basic Ember concepts, fundamentals. It guides you through the building of an actual application, like piece by piece. It explains the things, but we see an actual application being built by each chapter.
So I've been personally referring a lot of people to your book because I think it's a really great resource. I think one thing that you've done really special is keep it up to date for the last almost 2 years that you've been writing it.
So what you talked about, you did a little pre-run at Global Ember Meetup, and it was very, very well received. Tell us a little bit about your talk.
So I'm going to talk about Ember and WebRTC. WebRTC is basically this platform for making video chat applications on the open web. I think it's really exciting because it brings a lot of the power of doing these really big, really ambitious features, taking that away from these software giants and letting anybody do them right in their web applications. And Ember makes that really exciting and easy to do as well.
So if people want to contribute to docs and learning, I mean, the learning team is so much more about just docs, right?
Yes, it's API docs, tutorials, also, you know, just infrastructure of the website. So there's a lot more coding in it than you would think, but there's also just content and how to, you know, make Ember a really newbie-friendly framework and just a place where people can get help easily.
You can reach us at hospitalrun.io, and yeah, we're looking for marketers, we're looking for developers, and just even for evangelists who would like to share the project with other people. You know, if you're in a country that needs this type of solution, you know, reach out to us, and we'd love to work with you.
And by the way, I'm like searching for people who want to join the project for the long term. So if anybody is interested, then let me know.
So right now I'm still an intern, but I'm looking. So
right now I think the biggest issue is that I'm using active model adapter, and I want to update it to JSON API. So I think that's where I could use some help if you have some time to contribute.
Get people involved somehow, you know. I'm going to talk to everyone I can today and get people involved. Whether or not getting people working on my add-on, or we as a community contribute to another add-on, maybe an Ember core add-on that does data viz, you know, that's something I'd really like to work towards. But yeah, if anyone else is interested in that would be amazing.
Well, I mean, really my favorite thing about the conference is just getting to meet in person all these people that I know online, and really like add-on authors, core team members, and things like that. And just they're so approachable and easy to get along with.
Everybody really likes to work together, and we end up with a better solution in the end for it.
Give them a hug. Like, thank you so much for contributing to the Ember community. Well, and Ember women are just more fashionable in general.
That actually is true.
Isn't
That's
it
true.
true?
Yeah, that's very true.
Oh my God, it's totally true.
We love getting to know new people within the Ember community, and it's just been a ton of fun.
it has been amazing. I actually am here on a scholarship ticket, and I'm a computer science student who's interning right now. So this has been an amazing opportunity. All I want to do is go home and like work on my Ember project.
And I think we're going to see a lot of work going into moving towards angle bracket components, which will be great. I'm really excited about engines. That's going to kind of bring a whole nother level of organization and scale for the Ember community in large organizations. You want to ship one big app, but you want to have multiple product teams developing it. And so engines are going to be a great addition for that. Also for improving things like initial boot time of Ember applications, making them more mobile friendly, etc. So there's tons of stuff happening. Excited for a lot of the work that's been going on in Ember CLI to enable things like code splitting and whatnot, and that's somewhat related to the engine's work as well. So it's nonstop. There's plenty of stuff happening, and I'm excited to start seeing this stuff land in the next year. I love you guys. It's been an amazing EmberConf. It blows my mind. I've been telling people, I remember back when I used to know everybody that used Ember. There was 50 of us back in 2011, and now it just blows my mind to think that I can't actually say hi and shake the hands of everybody here. We're 1,000 strong now, so it's awesome. So thanks for being a part of the community.
Eric sandwich. Okay.